Aber switch to German. So. Ja, ein herzliches Hallo jetzt an alle, die heute Abend bei uns dabei sind. Ein herzliches Hallo aus Dresden. Wir haben heute eine ganz besondere Veranstaltung für euch ja, hier mal zusammengerufen. Wir wollen über die Situation in Belarus reden und wir freuen uns sehr, dass wir drei Personen dazu bekommen haben, die sich intensiv mit den Protesten beschäftigen, die selber vor Ort sind und daran teilnehmen und die uns ein bisschen was aus erster Hand über die Situation vor Ort mitteilen können. Eine kurze Info zum Ablauf. Wir haben jetzt also das Ganze, wie ihr seht, als Zoom-Konferenz, also als Videokonferenz organisiert. Hier sind Leute drin, die sich angemeldet haben und die einen Zugangscode dafür bekommen haben. Der Hintergrund ist einfach, dass wenn man solche Zugangscode öffentlich postet, dann kriegt man unangenehme Bekanntschaften. Deswegen freue ich mich, dass ihr euch alle diese da durchgeklickt habt und jetzt alle hier seid. Wir werden, zwei Sachen möchte ich kurz noch sagen auf Deutsch, weil wir haben, wie schon angekündigt, diese Veranstaltung vor, auf Englisch durchzuführen, um mit unseren Gästen ins Gespräch zu kommen. Also die erste Sache, die ist, wir zeichnen diesen Zoom-Talk auf und würden ihn dann sozusagen bei YouTube auf der SPD Sachsen-Seite veröffentlichen. Wenn jemand damit ein Problem hat oder wenn jemand sozusagen nicht daran vorkommen will, dann bitte gebt mir ein Zeichen. Dann müssen wir uns was anderes überlegen. Nur das möchte ich vorweg nochmal sagen. Also das ist unser Wunsch. Wenn es aber Bedenken gibt, dann werden wir das nicht tun. Und der zweite zum Verfahren. Also wir werden jetzt das auf Englisch fortsetzen. Wir freuen uns, wenn ihr Fragen stellt. Arian und ich werden moderieren. Wenn ihr aber sagt, okay, ich würde gern was auf Deutsch fragen und habt vielleicht ein bisschen Schwierigkeiten, das ins Englische zu bringen, dann auch kein Problem. Am besten schreibt ihr in den Chat rein und wir würden das dann übersetzen. So, okay, now we switch to English. Hello, everybody. Hello, Alexander, Julia, and Malvina. Thanks for joining us tonight. Yeah, I'll give the floor to Arian, who will give the introduction to all of this.
Yes, thank you, Matthias, and welcome to everyone. It's nice to see a diverse group of people interested in the situation in Belarus, and that was the question we asked ourselves a few weeks ago, that we had the elections, and we just wanted to know more about the situation on the ground, and therefore I asked Malvina, who I studied with in Warsaw some 5 years ago, if she would be willing to join us for a talk. And we're very happy to have you here, Malvina. Malvina is a trained translator and a political scientist from the College of Europe. And she's now working in Warsaw. And we're happy that Malvina brought two friends of hers along. Julia, who's currently based in Minsk, and Alexander, who's also based in Warsaw and works for Belsat. And I would suggest that you just give us a very short introduction about your personal perspective on the protests and about yourself and how you see the situation at the moment. And then we just want to have this as a very open discussion and take the questions from participants. So yes, Alexander, if you would start, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, probably. Thank you very much for the invitation, and hello to everybody. I will just start from the most important thing probably about this protest. It's the biggest, we are experiencing the biggest protest in the history of modern Belarus since gaining independence. Even in 1991, the social movement, the political agitation, social protests and political protests were not so hard like now. So it is a very, very unique situation, and we can see that political changes and social changes we are experiencing now will make a great impact on the Belarusian society. We do not know what will be the outcome of these protests, but the society will change, it's for sure. And why it is important for not only for Belarus, but for the whole region. The political changes in Belarus, they're the result of, so the political protests in Belarus, they're a result of deep economic and social changes, which can be described as the degradation of the Soviet infrastructure. So this post-Soviet dictatorial world we see in our region is falling down. The first movements we could experience in Ukraine, which ended up tragically. So the other similar processes are going on in Caucasus countries, but still Belarus was the most, how can I say, stable authoritarian regime among all the post-Soviet regime, except for Central Asian states. So now, I think, so I dare to say that we are entering in another chapter of the social and political history of this region, and the processes which are going on in Belarus, this degradation of post-Soviet infrastructure, this authoritarian world, will happen. These processes are going on in Russia as well. I do not want to say that the results will be the same, but this process of wearing out of these mechanisms, economic ones, social ones, so which were inherited from the Soviet times, it also takes place in Russia as well. Thank you.
Forgetting to unmute. Thank you, Alexander. Julia, do you want to come in at this point and maybe share your perspective on the issues at the moment?
Well, I can add up some things to what Alexander has just said. There's actually a lot to say. So apart from myself being just an ordinary citizen who's participating in Sunday marches and rallies, I'm also an activist, I would say, a very active instructor at the university, where we are protesting a lot, and where there are a lot of things, where a lot of things already happened to the students and to the teachers themselves who were on strike. So I'm myself experiencing not very pleasant times when I'm on the verge of being fired and I'm constantly under pressure by the chancellor, by the dean. So I would say these are not very good times to experience. So I wish no one would experience that as well. But coming back to the situation on the whole in Belarus, I would say that I completely agree with Alexander and with the statements provided by him. I think like there are a lot of issues overlapping. So it's not about the time when the Belarusian people just realized, well, we have to do something. There's been a lot of burdens on us, social and economical, and economic as well. So I just think that so the rigged election, as well as like this blindness of the authorities and their failure to recognize that the protests are taking place, triggered like mass movement all over Belarus, mostly Minsk, but I think it's surprising that even like small cities and towns also like join in with Minsk. And the worst thing about the protest is that so it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen even tomorrow. So, and as a person who's now based in Minsk, I myself experienced 3 years of being detained on, I don't know, each hour probably. Every time I go back home, I'm always like looking around, sticking with someone who looks really, really weird, or those like, you know, police officers who wear mask and just civil clothes, and yes, so it's always about like being worried and bothered about what's going to happen next. So that is why I think the Belarusian nation, like on the whole, experienced this like mood swings. One day you think that okay, the protests are now going to work, and the next day there is like, for example, there was a small, I don't know, a lone rally. So, okay, organized by one person in a small town, and then you feel this excitement about the possible positive outcomes of the protest. Well, I'm sorry if I'm just jumping from one topic to another. So if I'm like taking over the floor too much, please stop me. So I'm sorry. I think I'm just too emotionally driven in general, as I've described the situation, so it's quite obvious why. So I think I will stop here. But if anything comes up in my mind, if you allow that, I would like to share as well.
Thank you, Julia. I think there are many very interesting points there that we will pick up later, but I would give the floor to Malvina and ask her if you want to add certain points from your perspective.
Yeah. As we all know, that all this started already 3 months ago, and since then, like all the protests and people, it was all peaceful. But from the riot police, it was always brutal, beating, detaining people, and so on. And it keeps being like this until now. But I think that the authorities, they understand that the situation is going out of control, and they are trying to actually use some more unhuman ways of let's say, telling people that stop actually protesting. And for instance, we've seen now, like a couple of days ago, they actually turned off the water and heating of one of the politically active districts in Minsk. So yeah, I guess probably the authorities, they are running out somehow of the ways how actually to all stop it, to stop the protesting. Otherwise, if is to, let's say, general perspective of all this, I completely agree, and I keep up with Alexander what he said, that it's the hugest protest in the whole history of Belarus, and a huge achievement of all of this is that actually Belarusian people started to be politically active, because until now only like very small let's say number of people in Belarus were actually caring what is politically happening in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe if I may add a very, very interesting perspectives, and I feel that you are also very like personally involved in what happens, and that you're active and activists in the protests. And I wonder when we've seen all the protests in Belarus, and for me it was impressive how many people were in the streets. I mean, it was a real mass protests, considering there's such a restrictive regime and riot police, and that people are suppressed in their right to protest. And how do you see the situation, the moment, situation of the people that are imprisoned because of the expression of their opinion, and political prisoners and the opposition leaders. How do you see the situation in the moment and the prospects of the protests?
Okay, maybe I will start from more general scientific perspective. There is a general political, how to say, politological rule. So the protests which are not organized, which does not have structure, center, and clear, maybe goal defined by the leadership, they're doomed to lose. So probably in case of Belarus, now we are seeing this little bit of fatigue of the society, and the regime has learned how to suppress the protests. They use some reconciliation measures, like they just released hundreds of thousands of thousands of students from the different universities who are protesting. So they're kicked out from the universities, and now they ask them to return. Another case is, for instance, this switching off heating and water supply for the protesting district in Minsk. And another repressive measure is criminal cases against the medical workers who published, who sent to the journalists the information that one of the protesters who was killed by the police forces was not drunk, as police said. So they initiated a criminal case just because these doctors didn't want to be silent in a case when the state is lying. So we see that in last three weeks the protests are not so widespread, so numerous like it was in August, September, or October. It may be related to the fatigue, to the pandemic, or probably some fear of the society, because as for up to now, the protest has not achieved its central goal. So the removal of Lukashenko and new elections. So we see that the authoritarian leader who has been ruling country for 24 years, 26 years. Yeah, so he doesn't want to quit his job. But okay, we see this really gray picture, but at the same time, as I said, the revolution happened in the people's behavior. So French sociologists, which studied the mass movements and revolutions, I don't remember the name, but one of the sociologists, he said that revolution is the process of it's mass process of political socializations. People who were passive learn to communicate and to interact. And this experience, this knowledge will stay. And Lukashenko has two problems, probably. First, it's economic situation, which is really, really bad now. And the second is the society and this protest potential who stays now. And it, even if he, how to say, makes it, suppresses this protest now, in a couple of months, it can explode once again, because this interaction and this discontent is still present.
Yeah, I might add to what Alexander said, that I guess people now in Belarus, the ones who go to protest, they're extremely courageous, and I guess now they understand that whenever they go actually to the streets, it can end up in the prison or in the hospital. And yeah, probably somehow, as Sasha said, that the protests are not so numerous because maybe some people, they somehow they cannot overcome this fear, you know, to be beaten, or as we've seen, like 8 people died because of they were so brutally beaten by the police. So yeah, and also people also see that the protests, they are already there for 3 months, and actually there is no such a result that they might see. Yeah.
But what's the strategy then? I mean, what's the strategy of the opposition, of the protesters? It's very interesting that you share this perspective, because what we see in the news in Germany, and I'll give to Harald just now, is that they also say it's becoming something like a routine, that you have the seniors protesting on Monday, on Wednesday it's students, Saturday it's the women, and Sunday it's everyone. But there's a strange feeling that it's kind of a gridlock, and we don't know the way forward. Harald, do you want to come in at this point and ask a question, or is that for later?
To ask a question, yes. First of all, I was so very surprised how people in Belarus could be so strong and do this protestation for such a long time. This is so surprising, and I wonder how you do it. How can you be so strong and for such a long time? It is, I think people must have fear, because you don't live in a democracy. And as you just said before, I think people have every day the problem that the police is fighting at them, and they don't know if they survive the day or the next week. And this is a phenomenon, I think, because it's much more than we were used to see in Germany 30 years ago and so on. It was even very, very emotional, but it was only for a few weeks, it was so very dangerous. And now you do this for more than half a year. That is very surprising. And I wonder, do you think you can go on over the winter? And do you think the police will become more brutal? And do you fear a military intervention? Could you tell us something about what does the army do? Do they say something? How do they behave?
I think Yuri is the best person to answer the question about the emotional feelings of people and their perseverance. And as about army, I'm a political scientist and journalist, and probably I will answer it later. So just Yuri, if you don't mind, I would like to know your opinion.
Well, I was actually going to intervene before. So, well, I have to admit that that being the so-called, to my mind, the climax of the protest, or at least not the climax, but the turning point, which already demonstrated where all the protesting movement would go. So first of all, that was the ultimatum which Svetlana Tikhanovskaya announced she announced it at the beginning of October. But so what was implied by that ultimatum is that on the 25th of October, right?
26th of October.
Okay, if Lukashenko does not respond to 3 demands by people, which are to release the political prisoners, to step down, and to stop police brutality at the streets. Then starting with the 26th of October, all the country starts the strike. So, and I think a lot of people really relied on that, as well as myself. And at my university, there were around like 30 people out of 700 teaching staff members who actually went on strike for a week. And I think a lot of people relied on the factory workers, since yes, they're working at the plants, which are the sustainable part of this regime, right? Which yeah, financially sustains the all the country. But unfortunately, our expectations were not met up. And we could see by the end of that week, which started with the 26th, that the strike was not that wide as we expected it to be. And I think at that very point, a lot of Belarusians realized that, okay, something is not going the way we would like it to. And then there was the murder of one of the protesters. He was actually not that active according to his family's information. He was very active in the courtyard of his, but he was, as far as I know, he rarely went out on rallies. But he was beaten to death by riot police, and that was also one of the triggers, which made us think where the protest would go. And well, now we see that the authorities actually they tend to lie about his death and speculate about it in absolutely ridiculous ways. And I think that what is really one of the most terrible things about the protest direction is that people so much tend to see the violence that they even stopped reacting to this in a proper way. In August, we were really surprised seeing how many people were detained on Sundays and what happened to them during their imprisonment. Now, every day I myself see the news, I'm okay. That's a daily routine, as you mentioned it for me. So, and that's I think a really bad side. It's kind of Stockholm syndrome, right? We are getting used to what our running or what our, I don't know, strong man, let's call it this way, is doing to his people. So okay, we're not his people anymore. He's not legitimate. I'm sorry. Well, that's, I think. Have I made myself clear, or shall I add something up to it about the emotional conditions of the Belarusians? Okay, I hope I have made myself clear. There are no questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
And probably a couple of words about the army and possibility of military intervention. Basically, probably you lived through the communist times. Probably I just suggest so, and such regimes which are based on bureaucracy and military, they experience trouble in certain cases when they lack resources. So they lack financial resources, human resources, and also the very important resources, credibility. So for Lukashenko now, he's lacking financial resources, probably human resources as well, because many people are leaving the office and the quality of administrative decisions is deteriorating. So it will also produce some problems, and also it getting less and less credible. So now he's credible by force. So okay, I promised you to put you into prison, I will do it. But in August, it was the moment when they were threatening people every day. So next day we'll make order and silence all, in the whole city, in Minsk, in the whole country, but it never happened. So they were incredible at that time. And at that time, Lukashenko was really at the brink of collapse. Now probably he's more stable, but still the problems are ahead. As about the role of Belarus, so the most how can I say, the force who helped Lukashenko to keep the power was and is the police, not even secret services and not the army. So the internal troops, police forces, riot police, they turned out to be completely loyal to Lukashenko. There were some desertion from these structures, but not so much. So he created a system when people serving in these structures are really isolated from the society, and they are attached to this system by their different like allowances. Like they get free flat for serving in this riot police or special police units. They have earlier retirement, and also now they're hated by the society, and it's another process. They just try to defend themselves. So they try to, how can I say, keep up. So and rationalize their behavior by saying that now we are protecting our children. So this is the police forces. Secret services, surprisingly enough, are not so present. So now, during the previous crackdowns, we could see different allegations. So so-called documentary films fabricated by Lukashenko KGB, but now we do not see it. And the army is quite so not quite numerous force in Belarus. It's not huge. It's about 40,000 people, but still, you know, I think the Ministry of Internal Affairs, they have comparable. Even less, so they have even less forces. So the half of people in uniform in Lukashenko was not put on the street. Why? Because I think the authorities were afraid that they will take a side of people, especially in August, September, because army is not so isolated from the society as the police forces in Belarus. But army is much more passive. It does not play any political role in Belarus, and it was made on purpose, I think. It is, we have a good side of this and bad side of this, but yeah, army is the poorest, the more passive, and probably the closest to the society. But I would not expect any political statement from the officers. So in my opinion, it's impossible. But thanks God, I do not expect so much of repression from the army. We have another threat of military intervention. What we could see in Ukraine, for instance, it's military intervention of Russia, which still consider Belarus as a very important. So it's basically it's a part of Russian land from the point of view of Russia. So Russian-speaking population having the same, so majority the same religion, being a part of the Soviet Union, is a part of this image of. So Belarus is considered as younger brother, so it's part of our family. And if there is revolution there are two consequences. First, they can choose more pro-Western direction, which is dangerous. Second, Russian politicians, they are also afraid that something like popular revolt will happen in Russia, may happen in Russia. So it's a very bad example to the Russian people. That's why I still think that in case of Lukashenko overthrown, they will intervene or do something even by military force. It's quite difficult to make because so the occupation of the countries it's really strange and difficult in present situation, because all the intervening forces will be hated by the Belarusians. But as we could see in Ukraine, even in Nagorno-Karabakh now, in the last moment, like Moscow politicians, so Kremlin, they managed to put the foot in the door just to use their power, just to preserve their sphere of influence, and they can make any bold and even stupid military moves. So this danger is still present.
Thank you. It was very interesting. Also, as you mentioned, the foreign players, and we have a couple of questions in the chat that I would like to bring to your attention. One question is that about the division of society and who's like still in support of the Lukashenko regime and who's rather reluctant and who's supporting the opposition. I think that's really interesting. Maybe you could give us like a picture of the society, how it is structured. We've heard already about the police and army and secret service forces, but what about like other people, other sectors, other occupational groups and so on? And another question from a participant is what the perspectives are. We already heard about the strike that was not as successful as imagined. On the other hand, we have a certain lack of leadership of the protests, at least in some respect, and maybe also lack of cohesion. I don't know about that very, very well. Maybe you can also elaborate on the level of cohesion of the protesters and what it meant for the future of and the success potential of the protests.
I can say a couple of words about the society, because I have a lot of friends in Belarus and my family. So I can say that first of all, people who are very close to Lukashenko, businesses who were fed actually by the regime, of course, they're in support of the regime. This is first. And second, I guess people rather in the countryside, they don't quite understand what is going on, and they are watching a lot of, state TV. So they would rather say that, yeah, they still support Lukashenko and they want him to stay in power. However, people in the bigger cities and in the capital, like these are the people who are most politically active. They of course, they are against, and these are the ones who protest and who try to actually make him go. And as to their protest and the lack of the leadership, we have Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who is trying to do her best to actually support people in what they do and to do something to actually encourage people. But yeah, as we were saying, people are getting a bit tired and quite afraid of what is happening.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to propose you to say some words, because I have a very good example from your university, but my perspective will be the last one.
Okay, I'm really interested in the perspective you were going to give, but okay, I will wait for it. Well, yeah, a couple of words about the people who really who are okay with Lukashenko's regime. Actually, there are a lot of, like, they're very notoriously famous among all the protesters. First of all, even before the elections, one of the Telegram channels made up this survey just to check in which conditions were people for whom they would like possibly vote. And Lukashenko at the third point got 3%. And since then, there were a lot of memes going on around, like Sasha has only 3%. And there were a lot of like slogans when people were chanting, like going around the streets, and they were a lot like chanting a lot, referring to these like 3%. And there were a lot of graffitis around Minsk, especially referring to this number. And of course, as we have already mentioned, there was like, I'm sorry for like jumping off from the topic, which I hope you will get to my point once I will get closer to it. So there are a lot of courtyards where people gather together. So for example, there is one neighborhood and people used to not know each other at all. But this protesting movement got them all together. But right now, for example, each Thursday, like we got a meeting in the courtyard of the school, which was next to my apartment building, where all the people who just want to meet up and discuss what our actions would be as a neighborhood, just meet up there, just discuss, drink tea. We actually have like Saturdays jogging all together, so this is really fun. And also sometimes we just go around the neighborhood, like putting the white, red, and white ribbons somewhere, or just leaving some homemade things which have the same like color patterns. And then we see next morning, so we are doing it closer to the night, and next morning we see how like very, very few, but still furious people who are in support of Lukashenko's regime just tear away these ribbons with so much anger. And sometimes people try to approach them to ask if they understand actually what they are doing. And the problem is that people are so unaware of even like any ethics, and they cannot support any discussion. And they like, actually, I think we stopped like drawing our attention to them because they're impossible to talk to. And like, for example, there are not so many of them, but still they are. And what was also distinctive about the protest, more at the beginning, is that sometimes the authorities were trying to hold pro-Lukashenko marches on the days the protesting marches were going to take place. And of course, they failed at it so much. They paid people from all over the country to come to Minsk. They ordered buses for them, trains, and they gave them a day off for them to come to Minsk and to participate in a protest, which actually looked like a gathering of people who got together to have a drink, like to drink alcohol. So, well, I think it's probably a very deep insight, and how the people who support Lukashenko look like and what they are like. And I think I've talked about too much. I'm sorry for taking up.
So, and now, if you allow me, I will just sum up or organize what Yulia said in more scientific way. I will start from one study I did several years ago about the role of state sector in Belarusian economy. So, Belarusian society and Belarusian economy, it is a result of the long process of social engineering made by the totalitarian, so put it really sincere, totalitarian Soviet regime. So where thousands of people which did not fit to the state control economy and to one ideology were physically killed. So what are the results? We have hugely industrialized country based on state-owned factories, and the state bureaucracy is the only organizer of the society. There is no links or experience of cooperation between people. All the people are organized by the state, and there is no other simplest form like church organizations, so they are non-existent. And in this society, in 1994, just 3 years after getting independence, those people elect pro-Soviet populist leader, which is saying, now we have huge economic crisis, let's turn back to the Soviet times, let's restore everything we had, and we will live in a happy life, we'll continue our life like it was. So at the beginning of 2000s, about 75% of Belarusian GDP was produced in the state-owned sector, and the comparable size of the people worked for state-owned sector, for state bureaucracy, for like state institutions like schools, hospitals, etc., and work for state-owned factories. In 2017, I calculated that these figures of people employed in state-owned sector, including workers of state-owned factories and people working for public institutions, was about 60%, and the size of GDP produced by state sector was about 55–60%. So we could see a decrease of this employment in state-owned sector, and also the increase of share of private market economy in Belarus. And people which are dependent on the state and organized by the state, they have totally different psychology than independent people which rely on themselves. So that's why I'm saying about radical social and economic change in Belarus. And for my surprise, this social explosion happened a little bit earlier than I expected, because economists like Bogdan Gavrilishin or Jeffrey Sachs, which studied economic reforms at the beginning of 19, they said that private sector, so the state-owned sector should shrink for about 40% just to make social changes unavoidable. Now we have a little bit, so we have bigger state sector than it was seen in 90s. But still, some explosions, some social and political changes happened. And 25 years ago, Lukashenko was elected and supported by the people who were dependent on the state, who came to the cities in the last 30 years, who were living in the cities for 1 or 2 generations. And Lukashenko was a role model for them. He understood this society, the way of thinking of such people, and they understood his values, what he was thinking about, what he was saying about. But what happened in 26 years? These social groups just disappeared. So when he was elected, he was 39 years old. And on the social pyramid, he was just in this larger part. So probably all this top of this social pyramid, 2/3 of the society, he could share his way of thinking, his values, his mental constructions with them. They understood each other. Now, Lukashenko is 66 years old, so he's on the higher 1/5 of the society. So only 1/5 of the society, more or less, he can share the experience of his generation, understand his way of thinking. And what happened, the example from Julius University, there were there was one of the administrative workers, top high-ranking administrative workers at the university, who called the riot police inside the university, and the student revolted. They said him, "We are paying to you, and you call here the riot police to beat us." And he said, "You don't pay me, so the state pays me." And then one of the girl asked, "Who among present here is paying for their education?" And 2/3 have risen their hands. So now you understand this differences in thinking. So Lukashenko and people supported by him, Lukashenko and his bureaucracy is the state, and people who are supporting him, they considered so from the Soviet time that it's okay. The state is paying me. I give all my responsibility to the state, and so I'm nothing. All I have, I receive by the state. And the other part of the society, they're making money for themselves, so they're independent. And the recent sociological survey has shown that when in previous time, so like model of Belarusian society, we have 30% of people who are always against Lukashenko, these independent people. We have about 30–40% of people supporting Lukashenko in previous years, and about 30% of undecisive people. And for about 20 years, this share of people supporting Lukashenko, although they did not have the absolute majority, they were relative majority. They were the biggest group in the society. And what happened in recent years? The economic crisis and the degradation of the Soviet-style enterprises made this economy shrinking, and this group of the supporters of Lukashenko has become a relative minority. Probably the people who are against Lukashenko, they are not the absolute majority of this, so they do not have 60 or 70% of the society, but among all other groups, they are the biggest one. And this radical turn produced this social explosion and political explosion.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you for sharing very interesting insights on the internal perspective. I would like to use the last 5 to 10 minutes to come to the external perspective and see how, or ask you how you think the European Union is doing at the moment, because we are a group that is focusing on European politics, and we would like to know what your perspective is on how maybe also individual states like Poland, Lithuania, France are playing their role at the moment, and what they could do to go further. Maybe Malvina and Julia, if you would start. Thank you.
So yeah, maybe starting with the neighboring countries, Poland and Lithuania, they're actually doing a lot to help people, starting from the visas, humanitarian visas, which Poland, for instance, is giving to people who suffered from the regime, and providing asylum to the political prisoners. Lithuania, the same. Lithuania hosted Svetlana and hosting quite a lot of other people who once again suffered. As to the European Union, I guess we would like to see more of action, of course, and to see a bit more of unanimity, if we can say that, from the states, because as we've seen, the sanctions against Lukashenko, they were like taken only recently. Yeah, in my opinion, probably we would want the European Union to react a bit quicker to what is happening, and also to introduce more sanctions towards more people in Belarus, businessmen probably, and people from the government, to introduce the sanctions against them as well. Yeah, this is my perspective. I probably do a bit more in terms of the visas, because, for instance, once again, Poland introduced this humanitarian visa for people, but people who come to Poland, they cannot actually work with this visa, which is a shame, because, you know, what else can you do when you come? So yeah, this is my, let's say, small point of view about the European Union help. Julia, maybe you can add something.
Well, I think you've just shared most of the ideas I had in my mind. I would also just suggest, since I'm like involved in the academic field more, to probably to initiate, if it's possible, more programs for instructors and for professors at the universities, because actually the oppression is deteriorating over the university staff. So not recently, one of the most active students with whom I've been in contact for a long time was detained, and he's in prison right now. So, and people, a lot of like instructors at the university I'm working are ready to leave the university, but most of them are pensioners. They're senior citizens, and they are afraid that they will never like get a position anywhere else, because they've been working for the university for most of their lives. So they're actually desperate. They don't know what to do next. But at the same time, they're quite experienced, and I think they would make a method to any country in terms of providing some language services. And as far as I know, a lot of help, which was like a lot of, I would say, helping initiatives, which can give some money for people who suffered a lot. It's not that quick. I understand that, of course, there is a lot of bureaucracy being involved, and sometimes just it takes some time to verify the reasons of, for example, being expelled or being fired, and etc. But at the same time, I heard from a lot of people that they actually preferred not to address such initiatives because it would take too much time and they would got nothing to get by. So I understand that probably my ideas are not that like clear, they're not very well like cut and made, but I hope just it will make you it will help you to understand the path I'm taking in my explanation.
So I guess Julia wanted to say that a lot of people are actually ready to act and to react and to be on strike, but they don't see anything behind, and that's why they're kind of afraid for their future, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you very much for helping me. Yeah, it's just, I'm sorry, that's too late for me. So yeah.
So yeah, I guess I would keep up with Julia's point that we would probably like to have more academic programs for students who are expelled from universities, and also probably a bit more of financial help through some solidarity funds to pay people who actually suffered from the regime.
And if I may add, so what can European Union politicians do in this case? So do anything to make Lukashenko stop repressions, even apply personal sanctions, so expand sanction lists. But sanctions are not for sanctions, so stop repressions. And I think that anything is good for this. And second, it's to help victims. And so Julia and Malvina said about it. And also give a positive feedback to the Belarusian society, just saying that we care about you and you're like us. So in this case that, it's very encouraging in Belarus when people in, I don't know, Dresden, in Luxembourg, in what I've seen in Brasilia, or so like in small Polish, Czech, German, Portugal towns and cities, they're going on the street and declare their support. So it's very wow. It's for Belarusians. It's very warm. So just some positive feedback for Belarusian society, for Belarusian citizens. Make everything to stop repressions and help victims. And also from the internal perspective, so Belarusians are not fighting now for some geopolitical perspective. No, it's like clear. We want free elections. We want separation of power, and we want probably two things and everything which is related to this. But if Belarus chooses this way of democracy, it can have different problems from authoritarian neighboring countries. So that's why we also should think about it. Thank you much.
Thank you.
If you allow me just to drop my last idea. So I still think that we should encourage factory workers much more. And I'm sorry, I'm not so much aware of how these like trade union thing works internationally. But if there are any ways that, I don't know, you could encourage like trade, like workers, not all over Germany, but at least in some regions of it, and somehow to encourage them to voice the support towards the factory workers, or probably if it's possible to help them, I don't know, even like move to Germany. I know that that's probably too much I'm asking for, but as I said, I'm not that aware how it works. But I still think that this is a lot depends on them. Yes, we see that more and more people are joining the strike each day, but still, in comparison with the whole country and with the scope of the protest, it's not enough yet. So if you could like engage some trade unions, that would be really, really great, and probably educate workers about as well, if you get in contact with them, right, with the like striking committees at the plants, because I think we could share the contacts probably, right, with them, the leaders of the striking committees at the plants, right? So probably it would be great to educate them somehow, because I still think that a lot of people find it obscure about what's happening in Belarus, although they are part of it. So I think education can also be a lot that you could do. And I mean, like education, probably like some meetings, even for students and for instructors. Like anyway we go, if it helps you, like to yeah. I think I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I mean, this was a very interesting and also, I think, an intense hour that we had the pleasure to spend together tonight. And even there's so much more to discuss. I think that at this point we just make a wrap up, and I think that a lot of us learned a lot today about the Belarusian society and about the drivers of the protests, and then in the end we also had the time to focus a bit on what maybe the external actors can do. And I think that I might say for our group, and I hope I can speak in the name of all of us, that we continue to be aware of the protests, and that we stand by you. And I think it was mentioned earlier by Alexander about Russia considering you family, and I think that also for us as Germans, and I think as Europeans, we consider you family too. I mean, that's also our business, and I think that we should like work together, and I think that we encourage you to carry on with this, and I hope that we can stay in touch and have this to kind of continue this exchange at some later point. And I thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for sharing your points of view and a lot of very, very important information. And also thanks everyone for for being with us tonight. I'll just switch to German. Vielen Dank nochmal an alle, die heute mit ihr dabei waren und auch das Experiment mal in englischer Sprache mitgemacht haben. Ich glaube, wir haben es nicht bereut, weil das war ein sehr bewegender Abend, von dem wir, glaube ich, noch viel mitnehmen können. An der Stelle würde ich es dann mal bewenden lassen und wünsche euch alle noch einen schönen Abend und wir werden, glaube ich, immer noch drüber nachdenken. Thank you very much and have a nice evening. So, bye bye.
Thanks a lot to you too. Hope to see you again.
Yeah, nice evening.
Good luck.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you.